Okay, in Galaxy in Flames, Horus has gathered his sons, Angron the World Eaters, Fulgrim the Emperor's Children, Mortari and the Death Guard, and they all went to Istvaan 3 under the pretense of taking out the rebellion that's underway there. But what he and the other Primarchs really do is send everyone they are not 100% will join the war against the Emperor down onto the planet and then virus bombed it, and then ignited it. And after Angron went full Leroy Jenkins and breaks out to go down onto the surface for some hand-to-hand combat, we get some epic Space Marine duels, and then Horus commits to orbital bombardment, leaving the fate of Loken and all the top lads unsure and unknown, or sans head in a taste of poor old Toiganen. Euphrates, Mercedy and Cinderman escape to the Eisenstein, which legs it out of the system to warn the Imperium and the other Primarchs. Horus then starts setting another trap and states his intention to strike for Terra right after. If that is the actual case, should I just skip straight to the last few books? I'm intrigued to read everything else. But if that's the continuity, and all the other books are filling out Primarch backgrounds and deeds, I'm good to go with Horus Rising. Let's get a look at the War Master. False Gods, he starts to fall to chaos. Galaxy in Flames, he commits to the Heresy and recruits some brothers. Next books heads to Terra for the big confrontation. The end. But okay, Flight of the Eisenstein. Here we go! So, we have a new narrator, and we're on this jumbo ship called the Endurance, and a fouled aspirant called Caleb, a dude who tried to become a space marine and came up short. People on board look down on him, but he's serving the Imperium and accepts it. He has a kind of stoic attitude to his fate, which is very Death Guard, and actually very Nurgle. From Realms of Chaos, when someone is afflicted with a disease or cancer, do they just curl up and give up? No! They live life to the fullest, they endure, they push on, and that's how Nurgle gets so spiritually burly. Do the traits shown by each chapter attract the attention of the relevant Chaos God? The Death Guard endure, they grin and bear. Nurgle goes, "Hey, my boys!" The Emperor's Children, all pride and beauty and perfection. Slanesh is all like, "Well, hello, stranger, come up and see me sometime." The Thousand Sons, we love secrets and the occult and mysticism. And Tzeentch is all like, "Hey guys, let's have a word in my secret library, shall we?" And the World Eaters are berserkers reveling in massacre. And Khorne is all just, "Oi, oi, oi," simple as. Are the ruinous powers at work here? Are they moulding the legions they have an eye on into a state where it only takes a nudge to push them into allegiance? And how far does this go back? From the creation of the Primarchs, and so the gene seed implanted in each Marine? If during their time of scattering, certain Primarchs were each tainted by a ruinous power, because they were more susceptible due to their predominant trait, I guess the chapter that also has that trait is then just a freebie. Or are the Chaos Gods after the chapter? Transhuman Chaos Warrior Legions, nifty. Or is it one whole awesome package? Horus may not have succeeded, but damn, I got me a Demon Primarch and a legion of superhuman, immortal, fanatical, loyal juggernauts out of it. Yay me. So anyways, Caleb is equerry to this captain, Nathaniel Garrow. Garrow, unlike a lot of the Death Guard, who are all from Mortarian's homeworld of Barbarous, is from Terra. He has a swanky ancient sword called Libertas, some bits of which are from before the Age of Strife, so it's well off the warranty. He has some banter with some other Astartes, and we discover that the second in command, Typhon, is stepping down from leading the next mission. But Typhon would never step down for anybody, and we then discover that Mortarian himself is showing up to take personal leadership. Caleb venerates the Astartes as it is. If he sees a Primarch, he's probably going to pee himself. Okay, one little niggle here. In a description, The ship has great panes of glass holding back the vacuum without. No, no it's not. It's a vacuum. It is literally nothing. You can't hold back the complete absence of stuff. You can hold in the atmosphere, you can stop the air fleeing into the vacuum, and the glass stops that, but it's not the vacuum coming pouring in if it gets a chance, like it's lurking patiently outside waiting to pounce. Okay, let's move on. It's weird that the Death Guard don't rise through the rank because of their popularity, only through what they do, because in the first book we saw that Lunar Wolves can find advancement just because of how much they look like Horus. That fleeting resemblance being enough to get you rank and promotion. The first dude, under Mortarion, in Terminator armor, with a helm under his arm, with a single horn on the brow. Dude, so what is this? You are already dressed as a plague bearer. Just stop bathing for a bit and the transformation is pretty much complete. Anyway, the equerry is staring up through the decks, pondering that the Primarch is just a few floors above him, and that if he radiates cold and dark like they say he does, and if a mere mortal like him can even be in his presence and survive. And this lends credence to what I was saying in the previous one, with the argument for and against being loyal that occurred in the Titan. If Primarchs exude such an aura of divinity and magnificence, imagine what the Emperor must be like. And for him to quit the Crusade and head back to Terra, the loss of such a massive presence in your midst must feel like a giant gaping wound in your soul. Such a feeling could easily be misconstrued or redirected as betrayal. Man, I am so down and dismal now the Emperor is no longer with us. That's because he betrayed us. You're right. Why else would I feel this crappy? I knew it. Death to the false Emperor who killed my glorious Crusade High. The Death Guard are also the 7th Legion. 7 is Nurgle's number. Am I being punked? Why not just call them the Nurgle Squad? There are just too many coincidences here. So this commander, Grulgor, shows up and this pranny is a real piece of shit. He immediately starts ragging on them. Oh, you have an equerry. Oh, I used to have one of them. It fell into a crevasse on an ice world and I was well rid of it. And then a Sister of Silence turns up and he's all like, there's no witches around here. Christ, dude, take it down a notch. You and Angron should just get together and have a screaming match over nothing. Try and get it out of your system at least. Mortarion shows up and we get a big description of him and his outfit and his scythe and the weird globes that he keeps huffing to savour like a fine wine and sometimes to chuck in battle like grenades to choke people. Okay, it's pretty much clear now that turning to Nurgle is pretty much a lateral move for Mortarion at this point. So they're about to move on a planet and everyone is betting on what colour this new alien race will bleed. Will it be red or white or green?
Will it be chips or jacket spuds? Will it be salad or frozen peas? Will it be mushrooms, fried onion rings?
You'll have to wait and see.
So I think it's safe to say that Cinderman wasn't wrong when he questioned when was the last time we approached a world with anything other than hostile intent. I mean, you're placing bets on what motion lotion is going to come pouring out when you riddle them with bolter fire. Fairly certain it's the Star Trek in one here.
Ah, we come in peace, shoot to kill, shoot to kill, shoot to kill. We come in peace, shoot to kill, man.
Of course, it's all academic, not like Space Marines have pay. What are they going to actually wager? I don't know, like in Top Gun Maverick, push-ups? But they are Astartes, what's the count? Losers do 5 million push-ups? Anyways, they are not hitting a planet, but rather a colony ship. A great big tapering worldcraft that is carrying alien colonists. And in true Imperium fashion, it's, sorry, galaxy is full, should have stayed home, Xenos, eat bolter fire. Assault boats are manned and are launched at the ship, confusing the craft because they think they are missiles, not populated vessels to deploy troops. The assault boats punch into the bottom of some sort of chemical lake. So when they look up, they are seeing the hulls of boats floating above them. They march for the beach, where Mortarion is already getting stuck in and waves his boys in. This inspiration, of course, makes them go absolutely mental. So it's start of Saving Private Ryan style, storming the beach and all that lot. And it's brutal. So it's like, these guys are, we've achieved so much technology-wise. Let's go forth and explore the galaxy in peace, find strange new worlds and new civilizations, and boldly go where no Xenos has gone before. And suddenly, you have these nut jobs in tons of armor smashing into your ship and slaughtering everyone the moment they step out for, you know, reasons. These guys may actually have been a peaceful race. Having thought the boats were macro weapons, the aliens are in total disarray, caught off guard by the sudden influx of warriors rather than the expected explosions. The Death Guard start rampaging through the bottle world, and the Sisters of Silence, who only communicate through hand signals and vox clicks, which is kind of cool, because it was pretty nifty in June. I'm showing the one from the series here because it's a bit brighter and easier to see than the one in the movie. Anywho, they are after psychers to, I don't know, serve up to the Astronomicon or something. They have this unsettling quality because of their minimal presence in the warp. They're blanks, psychic nulls, and it freaks people out to be standing next to one. Mortarion breaks out this brass pistol called the Lantern and starts blasting because he's annoyed to see slain Death Guard, and each one is worth 1,000 alien, which looks about the sort of kill to casualty ratio they're inflicting here. The boys proceed to the hatchery where there are all these eggs, but also it's where the adults go to be mortified, and they discover dismembered bodies and slain Sisters of Silence, and then they get stormed by this absolute behemoth of a beastie. While the Death Guard are okay with the rancid toxic atmosphere of the ship, not so much the Sisters of Silence. When one of them gets her mask ripped off, she dies with her lungs melting. Okay, knew it was toxic, didn't know it was that toxic. Garrow tries to get up close and personal with the beastie, but gets grabbed and crushed, his ribs cracking, his lungs collapsing. It's a brutal fight for sure. So he does the "for the Emperor" thing, pictures Terra and the Emperor looking after it, and gets the strength to chop off the tentacles and stab it in its core. It goes down, and it drops this cloth thing it was cradling. Garrow unwraps it with a dip of Libertas, and it's this gross conjoined twin, joined at the head. The air gets greasy, and he realizes it's psychic, and so that's why the Sisters of Silence are coming in with them. He had been wondering why the Witch Seekers wanted to join in hitting a bottle world, not their usual scene. So the baby freezes him and starts speaking to him in his mind. It looks through his noggin, discovers who he is, and that he is so confident he cannot see the cracks in his world, that everything he reveres is going to fall. It's about to say something else, but then someone puts a bolt round in it. The unborn immediately start going mental, and the Death Guard start going full District 9 to kill all the wee ones. Now, my gripe about having a bloke trying to do the female voices, I was initially stoked that the Sisters of Silence were here because nice dodge, they don't speak. But they have this novitiate that hasn't taken the vows yet, and she can speak for them. The sisters gather up the twin, and that's why they shot it in the chest, so they can probe around in the brains and have some fun. And the serf sees Grugor exchanging a token with another Astartes. So yep, here we go again with the lodge stuff. So in the previous books, there's always this one dude that really pisses you off, a real heel. First up, it was arrogant and unhinged Abaddon. Then it was that treasonous little egotist Lucius, and now we have Grugor. And I think this one may actually be the worst. So there's this guy, he really wanted to be an Astartes, but didn't make the cut, but he's still pitching in, helping out as best he can, and he's taking a bolter to get it repaired. What is this? I don't know, it doesn't have enough pistons and such to be a servitor. I think it's a man. It's not a man, it's a failure. Jesus Christ, dude, what a bastard. Does he keep you around to remind him of failure is to let down the chapter? And then he starts ragging on him even more, questioning where in the trials he failed. And it was this thing called the Thorn Gardens. The trials to become a Death Guard last 7 days, and almost everyone dies of their wounds and the poisons, and only a few survive and get inducted. So it's not intelligence or tactile excellence or strength, or it's just the ability to soak up trauma, resist toxins and keep moving? Okay, not sure that's the best recruitment policy for elite Imperial fighters. Maybe a written test before the trials just to make sure there's a brain in there? I mean, it's designed to a T if you're prepping a Nurglite battalion, but I question its effectiveness otherwise. Caleb is around because there's this old tradition that a failed aspirant can be kept in the Legion rather than be sent away. And Caleb isn't just some handout. He's actually useful because he walks unseen amongst the ship. And because no one pays him any attention, he can listen in and bring Nathaniel the mood and the pulse of the crew. What people are saying, what people are thinking and such. So an apothecary breaks up the insult fest and confirms to Caleb about he isn't a spy, he's making sure the captain is well informed. Garrow is walking amongst the men, gives the happy ones a smile, gives those who've lost a battle brother some commiseration. There was a series back home called The Great Commanders. I think it was Napoleon, or I think it was Alexander the Great, where it covered how he would walk amongst the troops after a battle, listen to their stories and let them exaggerate and such as much as they please, so that they saw their leader as someone who actually gave a shit about them.
For his wounded, he showed deep concern. He visited them all and examined their wounds, asking each man how and in what circumstances his wound was received, allowing him to tell his story and exaggerate as much as he pleased.
The Primarch shows up with Typhus, and they're both huge, so when Garrow is between them, it's like in Time Bandits.
You're on one side, him on the other. It's like being at the bottom of a bloody well!
The Death Guard are stupidly resilient. There's no toxin, no virus, no poison that can affect them. Even more so than any other Astartes, who are also a tad on the resilient side. They expose themselves to all manner of gross and noxious stuff, hardening their immunity to pretty much everything. And then, Jesus Christ, after a battle, Mortarion pours out a cup of something ghastly and chooses the MVP of the day and shares it with them. And it's this ultimate honor. Nathaniel's up. Typhon and Mortarion drink theirs and there is no visible effect. Nathaniel takes his, and every organ and sense he has is screaming. What are you, nuts? This she's like unbelievably lethal. Chuck it now. But all the company is watching and they are all envious because they want to be the ones getting the honour of drinking the poison cup with their beloved Primarch. So his blood and chest are on fire, but he's proud to be a good boy.
Oh my, that is quite toxic, isn't it?
This crap should just melt a normal person, but Mortarion is just like, let's walk it off, shall we? So Mortarion is telling him we need unity in the Legion and be of one mind, and that elements of the Crusade are going to be honoured to join the 63rd Fleet. Nathaniel knows Loken and Targaryen and fought with them before. He tells Mortarion that he has fought with these Lunar Wolves on prior engagements, and the Primarch corrects him. They are now sons of Horus, just as the Death Guard used to be the Dusk Raiders. Remember, always honour the new name of a legion when it's been changed. Does he think that Nathaniel is a loyalist who won't betray the Emperor? Has Mortarion already flipped? And is he scoping out who needs to be pruned from his ranks? And then, like in the original, he mentions that men need a place outside of rank to be able to talk freely, and Nathaniel realises that he is talking about the lodges, something that he has until now always spurned. Yay, Nathaniel. So it is really just lodge membership that is the gauge by which your fate is determined. If you are a lodgy, you are in with the Heresy. If you have rejected the lodge, here, how about a nice trip to Istvaan 3? I hear it's awesome this time of year. Have fun. We'll talk when you get back. Not. And so they fly the world ship into the sun because in the grim darkness of the far future, recycling is for pussies. And of course, let's keep that heel vibe going, and Mr. Grump is ragging on Garrow to Mortarion. He rescues women and kills children. You mean saving Sisters of Silence operating on the direct orders of Malachurst and ergo the Emperor's will and kills mutant Psycho-Xenos Abomination?
And he gets the jig from the cap.
Here's a butthurt form. Maybe you'd like to fill it out. And then he is mewling that he is not even worthy of being a Death Guard because he wasn't born on Barbarous. He's a Terran boy. He ain't from round here, you hillbilly dickhead. Wow. Not only is he a pissy, bitchy, resentful, spiteful bully, but he's a bigot as well. So he points out that it's weird that shouldn't we get on the vengeful spirit right now, but Mortarion says that we have left the field of battle and are now in the field of politics. The World Eaters and the Emperor's children should be permitted to board first, else rile his brothers. And Mr. Pissy can't control my temper butts in.
We're the Death Guard. We are second to none.
Yes, but let us let the others believe this. I like Mortarion in this bit. He's crafty but fatherly. I wonder if this Grandpa Nurgle thing is another aspect to him. He's calm with a wry sense of humour, testing without being overbearing. I kind of really like this dude. So, Mortarion and Nathaniel and Captain Chuckles head over to the Vengeful Spirit, and Nathaniel notices that it's a little bit deserted when they get there. This is an unprecedented event. The arrival of a bunch of Primarchs all at once, all at the same place. Where the hell is everyone? The crew should be piled 3 deep just to get a peek and a selfie. And also, the Vengeful Spirit had a whopper contingent of remembrances, more than most others, and he sees not a single one. Very suspicious. But it seems that some remembrancer died like committed suicide Blackadder style.
I took over from the previous electorate when he very sadly, accidentally, brutally cut his head off while combing his hair.
A couple of things draw his attention. He sees an iterator furtively dart into the shadows holding paper. And then he's in front of the War Master, who is like a supernova made flesh, and he's such an overwhelming presence that he's just semi-stunned to just be standing there. But then he recognises Garviel Loken, with whom he had shared a bunker during a ruck with orcs. Then he notices the very subtle telltale signs that something is amiss with the Mournival. There's hints of a fracture between them. Togadon, Axamand, Abaddon, they don't meet each other's gaze, and all camaraderie is just gone. Nothing of what one usually associates with this tight-knit advisory troop. Angron's there, and I love the description of him. A curled red fist of a face. Nice. So they go over a broadcast from about 2 years ago. It turns out that Sol Tarvitz and Nathaniel Garrow are mates. Oh, captain now, are we? Well, I've moved up in the world since last we met. Angron and Mortarion are having a chat, but Nathaniel gets distracted by his old mate, and they have this shared tattoo to recognise all the time they've spent together in the Crusade. Garrow is pondering and missing home. Technically Barbarous is home, but he was born on Terra, and he's been around for centuries, since they were the Dusk Raiders in fact, and one by one the Primarchs were recovered. On Barbarous, a mutant warlord gang was grinding the people down, and a boy Primarch rose an army and took them out, and with the Emperor killed their leader and accepted a position in the Great Crusade and renamed his Legion. You are my unbroken blade, you are my Death Guard. And from that moment on, everyone was, until then, from Terra, and then more and more from Barbarous, until Barbarous boys are pretty much the primary population of the Legion. Really illustrates the attrition factor of Space Marines. Yep, they may effectively be immortal, but a bunch of years of Crusade and a Terran-born Legion becomes predominantly Barbarosian, as one by one they fall and are replaced by Marines from another planet. So what's Barbarous's prime export now? Is it just Death Guard? Actually, that makes it even more poor for Nathaniel. When he was elevated to Astartes, he must have been surrounded by Terran-born. He fought with them, knew them, and one by one they have all fallen, and he is one of the only Terrans left. Christ, that's thousands and thousands of people he has seen die, people he knew. Man, he must have a will of iron to keep his sanity from that level of constant loss. No wonder he doesn't turn traitor. Guy has watched a river of blood beneath him in the service of the Emperor. I guess no way is he going to make all of that futile by saying it was all bullshit all along. So on Istvaan Extremis, they are making an attack to knock out the communications and monitoring as a prelude to the full surprise attack on Istvaan 3. The Death Guard rush in from concealment, place charges and blow open some bunkers and gun down guard and rush into the breach. And they are trying to clear the rubble and rebar, and the guy with the power fist clears the debris with a few mighty blows. And he's oddly jazzed, but it's because, as he explains, that as an Astartes, in battle, I so rarely get to punch a building. So Garrow ends up in combat with a war singer, who shatters him and blows a leg off. He tumbles down, the others try to protect him. The apothecary, who Nathaniel was all pissed at for hiding his lodge membership and said, "It's gonna take you a while to re-earn my trust, pal." Anyways, he desperately tries to reach him, but when he gets there, Fabius, the one who is tinkering with Gene Seed, is already there and applying treatment. Nathaniel goes into the healing coma, and he is visited by Euphrates, who tells him the Emperor protects. Well, duh. He starts to come to, and because of his new mechanical peg leg, he can't come down to Istvaan 3. Meanwhile, Mortarion is in conference with the War Master. That's not good. Gruel is being a prick, as usual.
You're just a cripple. What use are you going to be down there anyways?
Christ's sake, this arsewipe is giving Abaddon a run for his money for douche of the year. Nathaniel really wants to fight, but he can barely walk, and so he heads off to plead his case to Typhon. No, you can't go down with the assault, says Typhon, and before you whinge, that's from Mortarion himself. So has Mortarion changed his mind about Garrow? He's trying to protect him, give him a reprieve and spare him being annihilated with all the others he doesn't trust. Because if he wanted him dead, he could just be, "Okay, I changed my mind, have fun, head down, you won't last long with that leg, and even if you do, you still won't last long because we're going to virus bomb the shit out of you all." So, Grugor and Nathaniel are going to be sharing joint supervisor status of the deployment. How is that going to work? When you start virus bombing your own men, not sure that Nathaniel is just going to sit back and go,
"Well, there's something you don't see every day."
Well, I do believe we are going to be in for a hell of a duel on the command deck. So if Mortarion has such doubts about Garrow, why is he now on the command deck? Especially because he'll be right there when this grand betrayal begins. The description of the assault is a lot more vivid in this book, a lot more rowdy and epic. The narrator is a lot more boisterous. The other one was great, but this version is really good. The fight is going on, they are in the trenches taking out the bunkers, and then there's the monstrous impact of the massive drop pod that deploys the big old honking Titan. It's weird because in the previous book you get the story from the perspective of the Titan drivers as they are looking down, watching the Death Guard fighting in the trenches. And this time we are down in the trenches with the Death Guard watching the Titan arrive. But it doesn't feel repetitive, just like filling in the details. It's like in X-Files with the second vampire episode, the one with Owen Wilson, and Farscape with the tabloids, and Community, and King of the Hill when they become firemen. The trope of telling the same story but through each person's perspective, so it's slightly or even totally different. You're still really into it despite the fact that you know what is going to happen. And the fact that the head of the ship on the Eisenstein is a woman. And just like Abaddon would do, that shit witch Grugor is all like, "Oh god, a chick!" So he's sexist as well as a bigot. Guy knows how to rack up those ugly traits, doesn't he? Look, I get that turning to Nurgle will make you physically repulsive, but you don't have to mould your personality to have the same effect, Grugor, mate. So, other ships hide their workings with panels of wood or stone, but on this ship everything is exposed, the great description being of a twisted snarl of cable. Nathaniel is looking at it, and it's reminding him of the gnarled roots of trees, and the ship mistress is like, "It ain't pretty, but it's a solid ship, and it has relentlessly served the Emperor since it left the shipyards of Luna." And the Eisenstein took to space the exact same year that Garrow became an Astartes, so he feels an additional kinship with the vessel. They've both been on the crusade the same amount of time. Right, the name, the Eisenstein. It's Germanic for iron stone. Oh, I thought this was like in Moorcock's Hawkmoon saga with the Grand Breton Empire and the deities of like the howling god Churchill and the roaring god Harold Wilson. It was just a twisting of the name over the passing of the millennia. The Einstein over countless years becomes the Eisenstein. But oops, never mind, the next bit says that he is also named for a remembrancer and a scientist. Well, Einstein's the scientist, so who is the Eisen? A remembrancer named Eisen. I mean, there's Sergei Eisenstein, the Soviet film director who pioneered montage, but that's the whole name, not a bit of it. Maybe Kesai Eisen, the famous Japanese artist who did all these classic images like these? So, the housecarl has been asked by Garrow to keep an eye on a Stormbird shipment that has just arrived, because he is wicked suspicious. They have been tasked with keeping an eye on the surface and stopping any ships escaping, but they are in low orbit and won't have time to bring weapons to bear if anyone tries to leg it. So what the hell are they actually doing here? The housecarl goes down there and they are loading all these little glass hexagonal files like the ones in Moonraker. So, I wonder if they have the same effect as those did. And they are filled with this sickly green goop. And there's this weird symbol that he isn't familiar with. It's kind of like a bunch of circles with a section missing, all arranged around a central one.
That symbol looks very stern.
Yeah, Nan, that's definitely what we should do. That's the right thing.
That doesn't look welcoming and friendly now, does it? I'm fairly certain there's something grim and maybe dark going on in here. So, as Caleb discovers what they are loading, he bumps into a servitor and it drops what it's carrying, making a racket, and then the Space Marine hears it and starts to wander over. And Caleb is freaking out, because not only has he fouled his master, but he's fouled the master of mankind. Ouch, that's a burden. And at the last second, the apothecary appears, yanks him out of there, and saves the day. And again, we see how abhorrent and horrific the Life Eater virus is. When the apothecary realizes what is being loaded, he is utterly aghast. And if an Astartes is so horrified utterly by the thought of using this thing, it's like off the scale for a normal human. And now we get the other point of view, this time from inside the Eisenstein. A Thunderhawk has taken flight, which is weird because nothing is supposed to be leaving. And then it gets even weirder when fighters start chasing it, and then they start shooting at it. Could Sol Tarvitz have turned traitor? But Garrow is like, if a planetary governor can turn traitor, maybe an Astartes can too. The narrator makes Tarvitz a lot more panicky and shrill than he was in the previous book. In the previous book, he was like just, "We are betrayed." In this one, it's all like, "Oh my god, betrayal, eek, oh no, wow, what's going on?" He takes manual control because if anyone is going to take responsibility for this, he will. So he takes out the pursuing fighters, and on the bridge, the others start giving him grief because although the Thunderhawk is piloted by a mate, you can't just go against the orders of Eidolon, pal. He grabs this dude, slams him against the wall, and presses his vambrace into his face to show the eagle that's etched there. If you had fought as long as I have, you'd know that the word of Sol Tarvitz is worth 1,000 Eidolons. Nice. And then the downward spiral begins. The War Master, being in his presence is awe-inspiring. He's the greatest of the greatest. And then the realization that not only has he turned traitor, but that he couldn't possibly be doing this alone. And that means other Primarchs, others of his brothers are also joining him. So the scale of this begins to seep in. The housecarl is running up to the bridge to blab about the virus bombs. So the apothecary is more and more appalled as more Life Eater is getting loaded, because as an apothecary, he is well versed in the nasty chemical and biological and radiological and viral shenanigans the Imperium and its foes get up to. But nothing comes close to the Life Eater virus.
It's very, very horrible, sir. It's one of those things we wish we could disinvent.
Grugor is supervising the loading, so he is taking personal responsibility to make sure they are deployed. Grugor calls Nathaniel's bluff. "You can't face hurting another Astartes!" And for a sec, it looks like it's going to work. But then Grugor goes for his bolt pistol, so Garrow pulls Libertas. Now, because they are on this gunnery deck, there's all this machinery, and, just some globes of Life Eater virus that we definitely don't want getting hit by stray rounds. So ordinarily, This fight will be over in seconds, but Grugor and his toadies have to hold fire, meaning that Nathaniel and Libertas can safely get to work and get stuck in. But what of the rest of the people working around them, the Imperial Guards and such? Just like in the previous books, when Imperial Guard have the numbers, they are immediately bullies, like picking on Carcassy or wailing on Euphrates. So, we have two captains fighting. One of them is alone. The other has a bunch of Astartes backing him up. We're in, lads! Get Captain Solo! Jerks! Although, maybe it's true. They are always the poor saps fed into the meat grinder, eaten by Tyranids, turned into furniture by Drukhari, so when they get the chance to kick some back, they just have to take it. And a stub pistol comes out and everyone starts blasting.
You're shooting too close to the rocket. Him, but not the rocket. The other mutants, Professor. The rocket! Not the rocket!
And then Grugor is about to shoot Garrow, and Caleb knows that his little stubber ain't up for taking out an armoured Astartes, so he shoots the bolt pistol, deflecting the shot and saving Nathaniel. And then that prick Grugor spins, draws his knife and buries it in Caleb's chest. Oh man, I really like that guy. And they've gone and pierced the vials as well. Garrow dives as the blast doors start to lower. He makes it. One of the Grugor flunkies tries the same, but comes up short and is squished. Good, fuck that guy. There's an emergency bit where the banging of the doors subsides as the virus does its work, and they need to vent the compartment to space before it eats through the seals and spreads through the ship. And Garrow wonders if the voices he heard in his healing coma was actually Caleb sitting at his side talking God Emperor stuff. On the Eisenstein, there's the full discussion that the War Master is going to betray the Emperor and Mortarion is in on it, and they are sending everyone they don't trust down to the surface to die. And how did you get spared this? He taps his leg. I would have been if it were not for this. Even with the warp storms which are rendering the navigators virtually sightless, they either risk an almost assured fatal jump, or they get an actually assured fatal broadside from every ship in the fleet. So they decide to just go for it and leg it. They can't believe the level of betrayal they've got on their hands. He wants to send out a Vox to let everyone know, but then everyone will open up on them. I guess he was in the loo when Cinderman broadcast his speech in the previous book, but then again the speech didn't mention the heresy, it was more questioning the morality of the crusade. So, they commit to the jump on the sly, but they question maybe the War Master is right, and when clearing up Caleb's stuff, Garrow comes across one of the religious pamphlets and he starts reading it. All of his life he has considered himself a sword, an arrow in humanity's quiver, and now he is questioning everything, and he has a kind of mini breakdown and drops to his knees and asks the Emperor to give him faith, and then something passes through him. And I think it's Euphrates. Is she an instrument of the Emperor? Actually no, she can't be, because surely the Big E would then know about the heresy. So is she just a powerful psyker and just didn't know it? And the confrontation with the demons sort of switched on her powers? And that happened in Judge Dredd a few times. One time there was this actress who was starring in a Judge Death rom-com movie, and she was so traumatized by the storyline and having to fall in love with Judge Death that it activated her latent psi ability, and she started manifesting a Judge Death apparition that would take out the people she subconsciously wanted dead for making her do this. Another one in the 2000 AD annuals, some kids find a book of magic and they play at conjuring a golem, but one of them turns out she's a latent psi, and the ritual switches her on and the golem animates and goes on a rampage, and only by going into the kid's mind does Judge Anderson reel it back in. Oh, and my absolute favourite, there was the excruciatingly annoying DJ, Slim John, no, Johnny something cool. Cool Johnny Cool. He'd been in a bunch of episodes before, and then he gets found with his head in the garbage grinder. Seems he bumped his noggin, this activated his latent psi power, and so he could just hear how much the city hated him and wished he'd just die. And so overpowered by this animus, he'd just throw himself out the windows, under cars, and finally took a header into the grinder. The side judge wonders just how bad could he have been to warrant such a fate, and Dredd plays him this little clip of a Cool Johnny Cool broadcast, and there's this panel of his inane babble, and the side judge has this look of utter disgust and goes, "Grud, I hope the little creep burns in hell," or something like that. It was decades ago, so I could be well off. Has she always been a psyker? And the Whisperheads and Jubal got the locks tumbling, and the demon confrontation and mortal jeopardy opened the door to her powers? Also, it's like X-Men, times of heightened stress activating their powers. Deadpool as well. And so the Death Guard are fighting away, and there's a mention about virus bombs, but the Istvanians don't have that sort of tech. But then the Titans stop shooting and start to button up, and the penny starts to drop, and then the virus bombs start to pop. The Titan gave them a vital clue that has them shifting it rather than just standing around going, "Oh look, pretty black fireworks in the upper atmosphere. Ah." And then an interesting nugget about the Life Eater virus that wasn't in the previous book. When they burst in the upper atmosphere, the reason they spread is that they are eating the bacteria and organic material in the air. And it's the spark, that first bite, that kicks the virus into Pac-Man mode. It then drifts down through the atmosphere and descends on plants and trees and animals and humans and everything else. So a dreadnought tries to throw Temitus into the bunker to save him, but it's too late. The virus has already gotten into him. And then he notices a crack in the dreadnought's armour. Not big, but large enough for the virus to sneak on in. And the veteran knew about it, but that's a veteran's prerogative, to sacrifice himself for the others. And then we get this monstrous description that I'm just going to play.
Figures fell to the mud as their corpses turned to a red broth of fleshy slurry, viscous fluids seeping from the chinks in their power armour.
And the dreadnought yells at him that he should have taken cover, but they are both already dissolving. Ew. And then in a sweet moment, the dreadnought booms that "I deny you your victory," and holding his comrade, he uncouples the safeties on his mini fusion reactor and it detonates, so they die quickly from the plasma explosion and not the agonizing slow death of the virus. Fuck you, Horus. You didn't kill all the Astartes that would have stood against you, you killed all the Astartes that were still decent and honourable.
Prick.
In the explanation up on the ship, there's going to be a second wave, but Garrow is... what more can the War Master do? But the whole planet is now just an open biohazard site. It'd take years of shoveling goop to make it habitable again. But that's where the Firestorm comes in, cleaning up Nurgleville and making the planet at least returnable to. It may not have any life, but minerals and other resources can still be got at. And then, on the Eisenstein, they're giving him grief. You've disobeyed the War Master, you're in so much trouble, you'll be demoted at the very least. And he's like, that's for enlisted men. What I'm doing is an act of piracy. But what you are doing is wrong. And he loses it and slams the Whinger up against the screen. Wrong? You want to speak of wrong? The War Master just virus bombed a planet and thousands of Astartes, 4 legions and millions of civilians. Another Thunderhawk is on its way to them and no one knows what it is up to or who is on board, and that little maggot Vox officer is, it's Horus, he knows what we've done, he's coming for us. They want to open fire, but he's all, no, she is on board. So the Thunderhawk lands and then Cruz hands over his bolter, saying that if what must be done has to be done, do it with this. But he's like, I'll have it cleaned and returned to you. I need everyone I can get. But all I can provide for you is one lunar wolf, and everybody gasps. Remember, you have to respect new Legion names. I will not be called a son of Horus ever again, mark that well. Yes, love this dude. So, in order to translate to the Immaterium, they need to be out of the gravity well of the sun. So it's going to take a few seconds to get out of the area. At full burn, everyone in the fleet will know what they are doing, and that's a lot of lances coming your way. They've got like a 1 in 10 chance of pulling this off, and that's being super generous. And again, you know how they say that evil turns on itself? Well, it seems that Chaos does the same thing. Typhon is sitting there brooding because Erebus had shown him the path and they've been walking it ever since. Horus and Mortarion are now on it, finally, but they've been on this road for ages and should be the ones getting the recognition. Dude, they're goddamn Primarchs, and you are just an Astartes. tenure doesn't mean much to Chaos. This is scum rules.
For a weekly wage, you have been locking up men and boys for most of your working life, right? Now, hanging down your leg is a chain, your key chain, and the length of that chain indicates the time you have spent in the service. Right, you may not have been fortunate in terms of promotion, but the length of that chain gives you rank over other officers of similar rank only. But at the same time, it acts as a constant reminder that although you have spent your life in the prison service, you are still only a basic officer. Now, who gets the stick for that?
And then the little Git Vox officer grasses them up. I mean, what's he thinking here? You either get found out and killed, or you die when they blow up the ship to stop you fleeing and warning the Imperium. Everything you are trying to do ends up with you blown up, you prat. So, they are wondering how Typhon guessed what they are up to, and then Garrow notices the cringing little gimp and grabs him. I am loyal to the War Master Undeath. Why yes, yes you are. Neck snap.
I never get tired of doing that.
Right, so the Extremist sends a warning shot across the bow that shudders the whole ship, and then they start shooting them for real. Malachus calls Typhon, who absolutely hate each other. What are you doing? Trying to get rid of an irritant. Nathaniel Garrow has taken the Eisenstein. I thought Mortarion had dealt with him. Nope. Instead of letting him die of his wounds on Istvaan Extremis, he still hoped he could turn him. But no, Garrow is a solid stand-up guy. At least this explains Mortarion's seemingly contradictory behaviour. Malachus tells Typhon that if the plans of the War Master get leaked ahead of schedule, Typhon will feel his displeasure, right after he does, and makes the throat-cutting gesture.
When?
So they are trusting a new navigator, who by rights should have her own ship, but she's got a real problem with authority. And as I thought, they are going for a slingshot maneuver, like in Farscape, and 2010, and The Martian, and of course Stargate. The effect known as the gravity assist or slingshot effect is a way of using the motion of a planet to accelerate a space probe on its journey towards the outer planets. And once she's made the calculation, she doesn't want to look at it because she doesn't want to spot any errors because there's sod all to do about it now. Plus, no one uses this anymore, so she's rusty to say the least. It's like using sails if all you've ever piloted are motorboats. They are an obsolete tech, something learned about as a novelty but not really used anymore. And then there's a confrontation on the bridge because the navigators are screaming that the warp is in turmoil and there's no chance of surviving this. Which seems to be a common thing, because didn't this happen in Angels of Death as well?
We are blinded by its passing. The great rift once whole, now torn. All is red and the light is gone.
I have no patience for your riddles. Speak plain.
The light, mistress, the light cannot shine in many darknesses. We are lost in the breaking of the universe.
Then Euphrates appears on the bridge and says she can help. The whiner says, what can you do? You're just a remembrancer. But it's clear he knows he can tell from her very presence that there's something more to her. Is it that she is just a psyker, or is it something else? I know they can have this presence like the opposite of a null, but this feels something more acute, like being in a Primarch's midst. And the Gellerfield becomes unstable, whoop-de-doo! And in come the Nurgle beasties, killing Death Guard, and Garrow is down there with Libertas, chopping them up. Garrow gets haunted by visions of Plague Marines, with the symbol of Nurgle replacing the Legion markings. Then he sees Mortarion in his full-on demon Primarch form. Then someone taps him on the shoulder and snaps him out of it. The vision just vanishes. So it sounds like, in the warp, Nurgle notices the Eisenstein and takes a fleeting interest in it. He has a look around, sees all the melted bodies, and decides to have some fun and run a little experiment. Maybe something that you can use on a larger scale later on. And all those killed by the Life Eater virus, they all get up and start getting jiggy. So Garrow has to re-kill the Housecarl, and then Grugor appears in some sort of champion of Nurgle aspect. So there's a jumbo fight with all those Nurgle Marines, and Grugor is expressing his hatred for Nathaniel, and there's a lot of grim, icky, nurgly descriptions of pus and flies and ichor and ropey intestines and such. The kind of things you don't want to be listening to while eating a plate of spaghetti. In desperation, Garrow realises that these things are being fueled by the warp, and so they need to translate back to real space, which is even more urgent because the Geller field is now moving from weakened to just flat out collapsed. Now this is risky because they could just appear inside a star or something, but they have little choice at this point. The resulting psychic shockwave kills the Navigator and the Astropath and all the backups, because I guess there's no psychic crash bags. Now, they are stranded and adrift in the stellar boonies, an unexplored part or rarely traversed part of the galaxy, and everyone is all rattled and in shock. Even the apothecary is all messed up because he has never seen dead tissue rise, and from what they've seen, everyone is depressed and freaked out. They're also pondering if this incursion was a side effect of the War Master's rebellion. Did Mortarian's treachery bring this down on them? The apothecary is then trying to treat this dude, Decius, who has this weird fudgy disease, and he can't do anything about it. It's so bad that he's pondering putting the Astartes out of his misery. It would be a mercy to end him. For him or for you? How do we know this isn't another symptom of your blasted lodges? And the apothecary is wow. Okay, he went there. No pulls, no delay, straight for the jugular. I think that was a little harsh. I mean, the lodges are a corruption, but not in the disease and Nurgle and virus sense of the word. Anyway, Nathaniel and Cruz are having a chat, and it's kind of like Raiders of the Lost Ark.
It's not the years, it's the mileage.
And there's some fun temporal puzzling about who is actually older than whom. In years, you may be the old man, but I may actually be your senior because time passes differently on our world than on Terra. All the time they've been in cold sleep in sublight speed travel. He may have been born long before Cruz. The numerous passages through the warp where time goes weird may also have changed time for him. Interesting. And Cruz is also, damn, victory is obedience, but obedience would have had us following Horus and turning on the Emperor. Also, damn my pride, I saw this coming. It's like, you mean the lodges? Not just the lodges, there were clues, references, expressions. Since Davin, things started to really change. The War Master healed by the arcane. They took the good-natured aspect of our Legion and began to change it, mould it to their own designs, and he regrets taking the easy road and not doing anything. And then it feels like they are talking more religion than the secular truth that they have sworn an oath to. And then the half-herd is like, maybe you want to take a stroll to this deck. Each day more people go. I guess when you have a goddamn saint on board and Cinderman is giving it some midnight mass style inspirational epic level sermons, you're going to see the congregation swell pretty damn quick. Mercedes is now realising that she is the documentary lass for this budding cult because her embedded memory spools that she is covering the rise of this religion and Euphrates' passage from Remembrancer into Holy Icon. Cinderman is wondering if he had said things differently, would everything have gone down different? Would a turn of phrase have changed history? And oh, for God's sake, he mentions everything has been on a roll since the Whisperheads. Go on, mention Jabal. And yep, he does. Sigh. After plague zombies and demons and the demon of Cinch that you summoned and that you watched Euphrates out of the blue nuke and the virus bombing and the slaughter of all your comrades, you are still going on about Jabal. Really? That's the most standout thing in your brain after all that's gone down. Cinderman is contemplating that he has found faith after travelling the galaxy, trying to bring the imperial truth and stopping people from believing. He ponders if they even had any success because, as he has had to do, and is seeing, people having to keep the faith on the sly. Was everyone he was lecturing just smiling and nodding and going, yes, of course we have stopped believing. You the man.
Oh, you're a smooth talker. You are.
And everyone panics because there's an Astartes coming and he's armed. But of course, even when they aren't, even without a gun or a knife, they can still wipe us all out. But it's Garrow, coming to investigate, and we get this cool description of the chapel. It's well Mad Max industrial style, all salvaged and scavenged. They build it in this disused water reservoir, this big cylindrical thing, and with the baffles that stop it sloshing around, looking like the banners in a church. cargo containers for seating, a fuel cell as an altar. Euphrates offers to explain and help him understand, so they head off for a chat. The Saint and the Soldier. Hey, that'd be a good name for a pub. Euphrates says that each day on her path is a new one. Garrow only knows duty. He fulfills it. He protects them. He takes out threats like Grugor. He's a soldier of the Emperor. Is that all I am? The instrument of the Emperor made flesh? And she asks if he has been anything else. On the command deck, that usual Death Guard pragmatism, pessimism is making itself known. They have sent out a distress signal, but it'll be millennia before it reaches anyone. So on the off chance that someone in the distant future ever finds this ship and our dead piles of dust that are bodies, they've begun mapping the local area to give them a jump start on filling out the star maps. So, our deaths won't be a total loss.
Farewell, Blackadder. The foremost cartographers of the land have prepared this for you. It's a map of the area that you'll be traversing. They'd be very grateful if you could just fill it in as you go along.
They only have about 5 months of food, even if they put stuff in stasis. The possibility of a cull is brought up, but you ain't killing any of my people. The solution? Bring the warp engines online. The apothecary is all but why. Without a navigator, we can't enter the immaterium, unless the prophet girl has grown a third eye. What's your tongue? I'm only going to put up with so much lip from you. Because, he's still pissed at him over keeping his lodge membership hidden. So, they do, wondering if it's a drill. They accelerate to full military speed, and then they are going to eject the warp drives and cause a monster explosion that will echo in the warp for years and years away. And hopefully it'll be seen, and someone will come and investigate. And a great description of the eerie colours and effects of the detonation, and the ship takes a massive slap. But a navigator on another vessel sees it and starts plotting a path to it. No idea if it's good guys, bad guys, Xenos, but they're on their way, whoever they are. Nathaniel is writing a last will and testament, jotting down everything that went down, because even if someone comes, the ship is in bad shape. Whole areas are without life support and are dark. They are moving the church deeper into the ship, where it is warmer, and they even start seeing Astartes in attendance now, because Nathaniel's chat with Euphrates seems to have given the faith a legitimacy, with one of their own starting to convert to it. Decius is in the isolation bay still being assailed by the virus, and it's a testament to how tough the Astartes are, because he's on his 3rd servitor already. They come in, and just from being around him, they are eaten up by the virus and start to melt, and a new one has to be brought in to take over. A Starfault shows up, and they shelter in the armory, which is where the church has been relocated to. Praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. Garrow is then, get ready, they are boarding us. And then Astartes teleport in and tell Garrow to get his people to drop their weapons and surrender, that they are under their command, etc. But Garrow isn't having any of it, and growls at them that they are under his command, and this is his ship, and they'll do what the hell he says. And then out of the blue, they actually do it. Wow, didn't see that coming. Maybe their luck is actually changing. Oh, and then Rogel Dawn steps out, because he's with them. Rogel asks if he can come aboard, and if they need a hand. Only in death does duty end, and for the Eisenstein, that end has come. They evacuate and launch a few nuclear torpedoes at it. One of them would have been enough, but considering what it's been through, they want to vaporize it utterly. Cruz is feeling a bit better after painting his armour back to its lunar wolves colours. Rogel raises an eyebrow at this, but doesn't cause a stink. The gratitude is also not all on one side, because Rogel was trapped in the warp, beset by storms, and the detonation of the engines briefly cleared them, allowing them to find a way out and also to rescue those responsible. So, debt repaid. But why is there a battle-damaged Imperial ship out here in uncharted territory, covered in battle damage from other Imperial weapons, with a lunar wolf on board and an Astartes in the infirmary dying of an affliction my apothecaries can't even begin to diagnose? So Dawn asks Garrow what's up. And he tells him what went down on Istvaan 3, and Sigismund, Dawn's captain, butts in and questions, how could all of this occurred under the War Master's command and him not notice any of it? And then Garrow informs them that Horus is the author of it. And then he's on the deck, Dawn having clocked him mightily. Having given him a busted jaw, Dawn has had enough of this fantasy, but Cruz steps in and tells him that he's got to listen to this. Garrow continues, and Rogel does not take it well. He reckons it's a form of insanity accrued from their time in the warp, some sort of infectious senility. In a last-ditch effort to get the Primarch on board, he asks, "Are you blind, my lord?" because only someone struck with such an affliction could continue to refuse to believe him. And Rogan loses it. He draws his chainsaw and demands that he get on his knees so he can execute him. Listen to this.
It was not often that Rogel Dawn's stern mask cracked, but it did so now. The fury of a god-made flesh erupted upon his aspect, and the Primarch drew his powerful chainsword in a flashing golden arc of roaring death.
"I rescind my former statement,"
he bellowed.
"Get to your knees and accept your death, while you still have the chance to die like an Astartes."
And then Euphrates appears and tries to reason with him, this tiny form next to a towering Primarch. But Dawn isn't having any of it, and then Mercedes arrives and tells him, "You've listened to the explanation from an Astartes. You've listened to it from a Sane. Now let me play you the actual footage," and she plugs in and plays the CCTV footage that's stored in her brain. These are memories. They can't be tampered with. The spools can't be altered. It's rough on her because she relives a fraction of the emotions, and seeing as it was such a harsh memory, even that fraction is going to utterly suck. So I can understand why they didn't start off with this. They wanted to try every other avenue before falling back on this, because this is going to be brutal for her. After the destruction of the Eisenstein via 4 atomic warheads, but before that they recovered the plaque at the base of the navigation podium. And the shipmaster is in some ways grief-struck because this was a home, and Garrow is trying to convince the Imperial Fist's leadership because all the civilians from the ship will be given new purpose on the Starfall, but giving this person anything other than a ship would be a waste, so Garrow's seeing what he can do. Good on him. So I guess Rogel hasn't been around his brothers in a while. He remembers them as they were, not the people they have changed into. He recalls good loyal lads, sons of the Emperor, not Lorgar after Erebus has been whispering in his ear, not Fulgrim after being seduced by the Blade, not Horus after being duped by Chaos with a flim-flam story to pander to his ego. Dawn is going to take the fleet back and head to Terra to warn the Emperor, leaving this dude Sigismund as first captain to check out Istvaan and report on what he finds. The apothecary confesses to Nathaniel that he was wrong all along, and Garrow gives him some pamphlets and says maybe these will help. The Astartes had been the ones pushing the Imperial truth, and now they are starting to believe, like Carcassy at the start. Maybe the lodges took the place of religion, the need for fraternity, being a temporary replacement for the need for faith, and with the lodges exposed as the source of the corruption, maybe that's why the Astartes are so readily turning to the faith as a replacement for their lost lodge system. Nathaniel turned down the lodges, but can't refuse this new alternative. The need for a religion, for something to believe in, always wins in the end. Dawn was supposed to be heading back to Terra to use his skills to fortify the Imperial Palace, but now he'll be fortifying it to protect it from his own brothers. Sucks. So, they are passing the fortified moon, and they make mention that the cradle of humanity is in darkness. Yep it is. With Horus turning to chaos, Primarchs falling under his sway, or flat out being possessed. Oops, sorry. They meant it's just nighttime. Off to the Sisters of Silence on the moon, and they chat with the girl who can speak from last time. They escort Euphrates away, and Garrow is all like, any harm comes to her, and you'll be answering to me. Cinderman and Mercedes are, where she goes, we go. So, they are stranded on the moon, and there's a worry that, well, the Heresy is full underway, the galaxy is about to tear itself apart, billions are going to die. Will anyone notice what happens to them? A few Astartes and some remembrances. So they realise just how precarious their position is, and how they could be taken out and no one will even remember them. When the war starts to rip everything up, the history books will focus on the huge events unfolding, not this little bit of trivia on the moon. Decius can't take the pain anymore, and the voice of Nurgle offers him death or life reborn. And Decius wimps out and wants to live, and mutates and escapes and starts rampaging. Garrow has an epic duel with the beast, and on this catwalk he cuts stanchions, and they get thrown through a window and out onto the surface of the moon. He is venting gas, and the Lord of the Flyers goes for him again, but he gets a warning in the back of his head and ducks, and then he uses Libertas after a brutal fight to chop its head off, and it falls over and bursts apart. He's recovering from his heinous wounds, and Cruz appears, and he hasn't seen another Astartes in weeks. Okay, wounds that takes an Astartes weeks to recover from. Man, he took a kick in. They get summoned to a chamber, and the Sisters of Silence show up, and Garrow is like, "Why have you called us here?" They get all petulant, and he closes his hand on Libertas, and it feels like an ambush situation, until some Legionis Custodes walk in. Garrow has heard that Astartes are to their Primarch as Custodes are to the Emperor, and Malcador the Sigillite is with them. Garrow is like, "If you're going to kill us, get on with it. If not, give me something to do, because I'm an Astartes. I need duty or death." And he says, "Oh, we'll have need of you. It might be a bit, but we need people who can think, who can act and operate independently." Which is true because, well, look at the situation with the War Master. The Emperor is going to betray you. He is? Damn! Better turn to chaos then! And then the traitor legions. I'm the War Master, and I say every one of your brothers down there on the planet that you literally just hung out with and flew here with are all traitors and need to die. Yes, Mr. War Master, sir. Right away, sir. The apothecary is just too guilt-ridden over his lodge membership, and the lodges have been responsible for all of this. So he's packing it in. He's done with being a space marine, and he's going to focus solely on healing and finding a cure for whatever it was that Decius was dying from. Good luck, because that was probably Nurgle's rot or something. Euphrates is excused from whatever the sisters are doing to her, and she has a nice bit with Garrow. He asks if she is doing okay, and she asks, "Is there any moment where you aren't thinking of others first?" Aww. And Nathaniel asks if it was her who gave him the warning, and she's actually feeling a link, and he's on the edges of it. So they take in the view of the birthplace of humanity, and the book concludes. A really good book. They've all had their strengths so far, but the Death Guard were cool, Mortarion was cool. Still not sure why he switched sides though. The characters were great, the crew of the Eisenstein, the voice actor was awesome. His Euphrates was a little too wholesome raspy for me, but it did allow you to tell the difference between Mercedes and Euphrates quicker. The other guy, they sounded pretty similar, but in this one they are together a lot, so it was useful to have that differentiation. Okie dokie, we've had a Nurgle Fest, and next up Fulgrim. So, looks like we'll be switching to Slanesh for the next one. I have a feeling this one's gonna get weird.
Something okay. And it's gonna involve both of you. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's gonna get weird.